One of his primary insecurities is that he doesn't want to be perceived as stupid because he had this plagiarism scandal back in the 1980s. And so when he walks into an interview or he walks into a press conference, he wants to have mastery of what he's discussing.
Yes. Well, that's the way we all know Lunch Bucket Joe Biden, I think, isn't it? The man with a mastery of all topics. Joe Biden, mastery of the universe. Or maybe something other than that. Well, I hope everybody had a wild weekend. My best girl and I, we had a great weekend. It was a long weekend, you know. We started Friday evening, lickety-split, soon as I got out of my Newsmax television show on Friday. And, of course, did my Newsmax television show yesterday, even though it was Labor Day, because, you know, we must labor. That's what we do. We're Americans. We get stuff done. We are the world. Aren't we the world, Michael? Michael Piercy is here, and he had, I think he got a haircut, and he had, all kinds of fun family stuff with his young son, and who hasn't been corrupted by the crazy system of lunatics. But we got that. We've got a lot for you today. We were just talking before coming on the air here, being reminded of that article that came out a couple of weeks ago. Based on a book, Barack Obama, and how the headline that came out of the Daily Mail, for example, Tucker Carlson claims, that's because it's in this book by the Obama biographer who's a big fan, Barack Obama enjoyed smoking crack and having gay sex, but nobody reported it ahead of the 2008 election. Well, that's not a claim, that's a fact. Nobody reported it. Larry Sinclair and all that stuff, but never mind that. Also buried in the same article, it turns out, that you find if you were in the news business, for example, and you staked out one of Barack Obama's many multi-million-dollar mansions, this one in the Calorama neighborhood of Washington, D.C. He lives in this house that he bought from the old White House press secretary, and it's all a great big circle fest in Washington, D.C., Joe Lockhart. And I know Joe. I took Joe Lockhart's job. He used to be at CNN. And then he went to work for the Democrats, but what's the difference? And then he bought the multi-million-dollar house, and Barack Obama bought the multi-million-dollar house from Joe Lockhart. But the story buried in that article that, once again, nobody reported and nobody paid attention to, is that if you were to watch Barack Obama's multi-million-dollar house in the shadow of the main mosque in Washington, D.C., because it's the most beautiful sound you ever heard, Barack Obama said, the call to prayer, the most beautiful sound he ever heard. And he thinks dog tastes pretty good, too. But that's a different story. And it turns out that also buried in there and in the book is that if you go look at, he's got a multi-million-dollar house on Martha's Vineyard. He's got a multi-million-dollar house. I think he's still got his multi-million-dollar house in Chicago. And he's got a multi-million-dollar house in Hawaii. It used to be Robin's Nest in the TV show Magnum P.I. But Barack bulldozed that beautiful, whatever it was, Italian or Spanish villa-style house, and putting up something more appropriate to someone as wealthy and powerful as he is. But it turns out if you go look at Barack Obama's house off of Embassy Row, Massachusetts Avenue, Gesundheit, you'll find that the driveway is very often filled with cars belonging to Joe Biden's White House staff people because they're there for their marching orders. And, Joe Biden isn't running the show. But it looks more and more like Barack Obama is running the show. And buried in this article, which nobody paid attention to because we don't have a news media in the United States, we have a corrupt institution. It's an extension of the Democrat Party, not a legitimate fourth estate, not holding feet to the fire, just attacking and smearing and slandering Republicans and fluffing Democrats, giving them, some kind of a hot oil massage pretty much all the time in a hot tub. And it's a circle fest in a hot tub. It's Washington, D.C. Yeah, but it turns out that if you go look at, you'd stake it out if you were in the news media. Say, hey, what are all these Biden White House people doing coming to Barack Obama's headquarters off of Embassy Row here in Washington day after day? What's up with that? So, well, you don't really think Joe Biden's running the show. He rolls out of bed at about 10 a.m. and he's done with his work day at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. He's on vacation 40% of the time. You know that Joe Biden has already taken more vacation days in 2.5 years as president, roughly, than Ronald Reagan did over the course of 8 years as president. And it'd be fair to say Ronald Reagan accomplished an awful lot more, smashing the Soviet Union, crushing the tyranny of Soviet communism. Actually collapsed under H.W. Bush, but it was all Ronald Reagan. And, a few other things, bringing us back from the brink. And we're on the brink again. We need, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? Where have you gone, Ronald Reagan? So we got that. Yeah, and buried in that article, it turns out these Biden White House people spent a lot of time over at one of Obama's mansion in Washington, D.C., the Kalorama neighborhood off of Embassy Row, Mass Ave, and in the shadow of the mosque on Mass Ave, because, Barack Obama. So we've got a couple of things for you on that. And also there's a poll that shows that Michelle Obama is a lot more popular than Joe Biden. Michelle Obama getting 48% among Democrat voters, 48%. Joe Biden getting 36%. That's a 12-point spread for Democrats listening along at home, mathematically challenged and all that. Pretty amazing stuff. And, generally speaking, the Democrats, oh, yeah, we like Joe Biden, and then they bite their knuckle and cringe and turn away, hoping that nobody will see them, and the look on their faces. Joe Biden was 70% of Democrat votes in the Quinnipiac poll, and who's behind him there? RFK Jr. has 17%. Joe Biden, 70%. That's a 53-point spread. And then the Wall Street Journal poll, different poll, not the Quinnipiac poll. Wall Street Journal poll has all kinds of interesting stuff, including President Trump with 59% of the Republican vote, and Ron DeSantis only 13%. Boy, he didn't show up, huh? I mean, he hasn't shown up, Ron DeSantis. But the big winner in this other poll is Michelle Obama, getting 48% of Democrats' love, and Joe Biden only getting 36%. The convention next year is in Chicago, Illinois. Hopefully everyone won't be shot because a lot of that goes on there. But we'll see, because, I've been predicting for months now that Joe Biden will actually not be the nominee next year, that they'll replace him. He'll step down, fake an illness, which he promised to do a couple of years ago if things started going sideways on him. So we got that. There's a lot of stuff going on just in that little circle right there. Pretty amazing stuff. Joe Biden was kind of on the loose over the weekend, and he said a number of stupid things, as you might expect, because he spoke, and there were cameras there. So that's how that goes. And we got that coming up. Now, in addition to that, there's also this biographer who is Franklin Foer, written a book about Joe Biden, and he was on with Chunk on Sunday. Chunk, who I think is done with Meet the Press now. Is he done with Meet the Press? I think he might be done with Meet the Press, because they needed a lady to be doing it. And Chunk is many things, but he's not a lady. He's not a lady at all, because, he's kind of a male person. And so we got that. But Chunk, this guy, Franklin Foer, the Biden biographer, he was catching up to me over the weekend and saying, yeah, Joe Biden, drop out of the race, may not be there, may not be the guy. And also your news media types like George Snuffleupagus, who is a propagandist for the Democrat Party, always has been. That's why he was hired by ABC Fake News. And what do they pay him, Michael? $15 million or $17 million a year to be a propagandist for, he does one day a week for about an hour. Pretty good job. It's no conservatives have that job in the United States of America. A 1 hour a week job for $15 million or $17 million. What a deal. It is good to be a Democrat, isn't it? But there is another poll that shows that Joe Biden has 46% of the popular vote, and Donald Trump has 46% of the popular vote. And George Snuffleupagus was shocked by this. Shocked, I say. He can't believe that there's gambling going on here. And he's appalled that so many Americans like Trump, because, it's like there's this great old story about a New York Times writer by the name of Pauline Kael, who was there at the New York Times during the Nixon days. And she famously said something like, "I can't believe Nixon won. No one I know voted for him," right? You know, and it's been a running joke about the New York Times and fake news media ever since. I looked up the quote over the weekend. She apparently actually said she only knew one person that voted for him. And it's probably the guy that did her rugs or maybe her doorman on Park Avenue or something. But she only knew one person that voted for Richard Nixon. So Pauline Kael at the New York Times, she was shocked, couldn't believe that Richard Nixon won re-election in 1972 because nobody that she knew voted for him, which was a great moment. The news media is still in the same place as they were then, pretty much. The Democrats are still telling us that Bidenomics working beautifully. We should all consider ourselves to be very lucky to be alive and on Earth at the same time that Joe Biden is, and he's president of the United States. He's a doddering dimwit, and we've got that going for him, but pay no attention. Jared Bernstein of the Biden White House was on television talking about how great Bidenomics is. It's wonderful. Joe Biden kind of apologized over the weekend for not visiting. He didn't really apologize, did he? For not visiting East Palestine, Ohio, where that awful toxic train disaster was so long ago now. And he said he'd visit eventually, and he still hasn't. So over the weekend, he was asked about it, and he mispronounced it twice. He called it East Palestine, which is no place. But East Palestine is in Ohio, and he still hasn't been there. But he proved that he doesn't know how to pronounce it all this time later, and that's okay. But he's assuring us we have a climate crisis on our hands. It's going to be hot here today, isn't it, Michael? It's going to be 98 degrees. Initially, they said it was going to be 100 degrees, but they've downgraded it, which is climate change, I think, at least climate prediction change. 98 degrees today. I blame the Democrats. The Democrats have taken responsibility for the weather. They did so years ago now. So when the weather is bad, you know, when there's a hurricane, blame the Democrats. They're the ones in charge of the weather. And they said they were taking charge. They're in charge of the weather. Now they're going to need to take away many more of your rights and a bunch of your property, and so then the weather will get better. Forget China and India and all that. Do you know that we, the United States of America, have actually reduced our CO2 output over the years? And we're about the only ones that are reducing, deliberately at least, our CO2 output, which is now the invisible man in the sky, as part of the the left apocalypse, the secular apocalypse, the climate apocalypse, that the earth is on fire and we're all going to die soon, as Congresswoman Katie Porter famously said. The earth is on fire and we're all going to die soon. And that makes her 9-year-old angry because they're raising a bunch of psychotics, aren't they? Yes, they are. So we got some of that for you. And lots and lots more. Michelle Obama. Oh, Biden books. This is kind of a funny one. Biden got more votes than any American candidate in the history of the country. But if you've written a book about him, you might sell enough copies to fill the trunk of your car, and that's about it. That's pretty amazing. And Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the entire House, and the impeachment inquiry that still hasn't begun. We've got Donald Trump and poll numbers. We've got illegal aliens in New York City and Staten Island, the breakaway republic of Staten Island. A possible United Auto Workers strike looming. Joe Biden doesn't care about it. Mayhem in Chicago the Labor Day weekend, and in Washington, D.C. Just Friday into Saturday, we had 5 people murdered in Washington, D.C. just to get the weekend going. Putin and Kim Jong-un together again, because you know how those commies are. Mexico and the Berlin Wall, the environment, and crazy Democrats. We are at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Ba-ba-ba-da, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. I haven't updated my numbers yet, but in Chicago it was a 3-day weekend, so at least 38 shot, 4 fatally, teenagers, little kid. And in Washington, D.C., we had 5 people gunned down just Friday into Saturday to get the Labor Day weekend rolling. Pretty amazing stuff. Now, a lot to get to, and I also want to talk. My best girl and I went with friends to the Nationals game on Sunday, and it's a baseball game against the Marlins, and then we were on a boat. Picture yourself on a boat on a river, all right? Because that's what we were doing, and it was a ton of fun. Pontoon boat, and there are stories to go with that too that are funny, and have to do with politics and Washington and all kinds of good stuff. But right now, let's get to, because I want to start getting to audio. I have a bunch of audio, 3-day weekend and all that, and I want to share with you some of from the Sunday shows and Chunk and this guy who's everywhere, the author of the Franklin Four, the author of the latest Biden book, which they're pressing hard to sell this book because no Biden books are selling because nobody's buying Biden books, books about Biden. And it's kind of amazing given that he got more votes than any candidate in the history of the United States of America, but you write a book about him and you can't sell enough books to, cover a diner table, a table at a diner. All right, let's start with Morning Joke, because this morning on MSDNC, where they have this guy, Mo Yarbrough, that's one of his pseudonyms. They all have pseudonyms. And he's a former Republican. He identifies as a former Republican. He was never a journalist, but NBC hired him, and they pay him a lot of money to be a joke and to lie a lot. And boy, does he lie a lot. And he brings on other liars, like Eugene Robinson at the Washington Post, who was in Men in Black. You remember him from Men in Black? He was played, he's played by Vincent D'Onofrio, right? And the stuff they're saying today is pretty crazy. If you get your news from MSDNC, well, you might become, the next suicide attacker for the Democrat Party. And there have been a lot of Democrat Party suicide attackers from New York City to Washington, D.C. to Alexandria, Virginia. At their peak, I think, they're killing whales off the east coast of the United States. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, so they're putting up all these windmills the size of skyscrapers up and down the East Coast, and in order to do that, they're bringing in ships that make terrible noises when they're driving piles into the ocean floor to attach Chinese-made windmills that are Cuisinarts in the sky and chop up rare seabirds and things and knock their heads in, and they drop to the ocean, and then the great white sharks eat them because they're everywhere. You know how that goes. But it turns out just in New Jersey alone, they've had at least, 12 whales wash up on shore. And that's just New Jersey. Then you go up the East Coast to New York and all the way up to Maine, Massachusetts and Maine. And you got whales beaching themselves and dying all over the place. And the Democrats just tell you to shut up if you bring it up. But I mentioned this because yesterday at the Newsmax show, talking to one of the producers on the show, wonderful person, Carly, was on vacation at the beach for a week in New Jersey, and a whale washed up, and then a man washed up, a dead man washed up too. I don't know what he weighed, but whether he looked like a whale, but a man, because it's New Jersey, and that happens sometimes. You've seen The Sopranos, but a man washed up on shore. And I said, well, what about whales? She said, yeah, well, a whale washed up, the same place days before. And this is because windmills, you had to destroy the planet in order to save it. You had to destroy the whales in order to, remember they used to be about save the whales? Now they're like, kill a whale for clean air is one of their sayings. Now, hey, we need to build windmills, and if we have to kill dozens and dozens of whales, up and down the East Coast. Also in New Jersey and up and down the East Coast, dolphins are dying and beaching themselves too. But at least 12 dolphins also died along the Jersey shore in a matter of months. So the dolphins and the whales are being killed because of the efforts to put windmills in, because you need clean energy, right, for clean air. So kill a whale for clean air, as I think a Democrat Party bumper sticker these days. You may remember the Save the Whales things were everywhere, bumper stickers and T-shirts, and save the whales, save the whales. Now they're the leading cause of whale death in the United States of America, the environmentalists. No sense of irony, these people. But yeah, hearing the tale, went to the Jersey Shore, a man washed up on shore. There was a whale that had washed up just days earlier. Dolphins are washing up. But they're getting windmills because clean air. So kill a whale for clean air. There's a bumper sticker. They should have those, and they're fighting them in Ocean City, New Jersey. They're fighting against the windmills because they're incredibly environmentally destructive. But pay no attention to that. All right, let's get back to Morning Joke, because Morning Joke, Joe Scarborough, he is clearly an awful person, just a terrible person. Not even counting that young staffer woman that died mysteriously in his office in Florida with a blow to the head found under the desk, and then Joe Scarborough dropped out of Congress shortly thereafter. Nothing to see here. The media doesn't report it. Pretty amazing stuff. And he was a Republican member of Congress at the time, too, kind of, sort of, But, we, the United States of America, we have reduced our CO2 output. But we get no credit for that. Have you noticed that, Michael? We get no credit for being the country that reduces our CO2 output. We're still the bad guy, according to the Democrat Party, because I'm beginning to think they're not on our side. Man, oh, Manischewitz. We've been reducing our carbon output for some time. But we get no credit for it. Isn't that amazing? Now, let's get back to Joe Scarborough, because he this morning was just brimming with contempt and disgust for the Republican Party, because the news media, George Snuffleupagus and Mo Yarborough and MSDNC, and he's there with his semi-inflatable flotation device of a third wife, Mika Brzezinski, and Eugene Robinson. You could have him play like a beast from hell in movies, and he wouldn't even have to act. He could just be himself. But this morning it sounded like, MSDNC is what it sounded like. Let's go to soundbite number 14. Here is Joe Scarborough this morning on his television show on MSDNC, which is an NBC News organization. And they have journalists like the Reverend Al Sharpton. Well, I think we got another Al Sharpton story today, too, don't we? It's another Al Sharpton story. But here is Joe Scarborough this morning, because there is a Wall Street Journal poll that discovered, and the poll is full of all kinds of upsetting information for Democrats. The poll found that when the Democrats indict Donald Trump, which, these radical left-wing, like the spawn of a Black Panther in Atlanta, Georgia, and the spawn of George Soros in New York, and they indict Trump, and they indict Trump. And it turns out a lot of people bristle at that and say, you know what? I'm probably more likely to support Trump because these lefties are abusing their power as prosecutors and district attorneys and so on to prosecute for political reasons. So his support is rising. And this is very, very upsetting to the frauds and the crooks in the news media, starting with Mo Yarborough.
What can I say about my former party? Very little that's good right now.
Very little.
4 indictments. Indictments for, they're more likely to vote for him because he got caught stealing nuclear secrets.
He got caught stealing nuclear secrets.
They're more likely to vote for him because he got caught stealing war plans to invade Iran. They're more likely to vote for him because he got caught stealing an assessment about America's weaknesses. He took them out of secure locations. He showed them to people.
He showed them to people. Kind of like Bill Clinton, he showed things to people too. He showed different things to people though. And then, like I said, kiss it and, things like, because he's Bill Clinton. And of course, Joe Biden took crates and crates of classified documents, and some were stored in Chinatown, where Joe Biden is the big guy and gets millions from the Chinese as part of, 10% cut for the big guy out of the Chinese business, for the communist Chinese business for the Biden family. And then stored over a steakhouse on Capitol Hill, over Charlie Palmer's steakhouse. And some went to the university. Some were in his garage behind his Corvette, the classified documents. Some were in the house. But no, Joe's very upset. Nuclear secrets, like he's, Julius Rosenberg. We're going to have to put him in the electric chair. And the left would, if you give him half a chance. Caught stealing nuclear secrets and Iran invasion plans. He showed him to people. My former party. The Kool-Aid has had its effect on Joe. He was never much of anything. He's just an egomaniac. Four indictments. They don't follow the news. It's one of the things I've been saying for a long, long time. They don't follow the news. They don't know what's in the news. It's very, very common. Speaking of which, see the guy, Philip Bump at the Washington Post, the interview he did. Have you seen this online? It's hilarious. Philip Bump, who's one of the girls from the steno pool at the DNC, and he's paid by the billionaire information oligarch Jeff Bezos to type for the DNC at the Washington Post. And he agreed to sit down and do an interview with someone who knew what they were a Democrat who hates Tucker Carlson and hates the Republican Party. Sat down and asked Philip Bump of the Washington Post a series of questions about the Biden family's financial hijinks around the world. And Philip Bump, it was made clear during the course of the interview, that Philip Bump he's supposed to be the Washington Post resident expert on the story, and he has no idea what's going on with the Biden story. All he knows is what he was told on MSNBC and read in his own paper, the Washington Post, which means he has no idea what's going on. Just amazing stuff. So Morning Joke, very, very upset with his former party.
Yet the Republicans say they're more likely to vote for him because he stole nuclear secrets, because he stole war plans. So what can you say about a party that actually is more likely to vote somebody because they've been indicted 4 times for stealing America's most important military secrets?
Bribery is an actual impeachable offense. And Joe Biden, Burisma, Ukraine, the phone calls, the emails, the text messages, the prosecutor doing an interview and revealing on Fox News that he said, of course, the Bidens were being bribed, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And we've got a news media that has their heads wedged so far up of into one another's dark and remote locations, doing a conga line, just amazing stuff. And he's very, very upset. And this is, if you watch MSDNC for your news, you're probably mentally ill. And if you started out not being mentally ill, but watched MSDNC for 1 year, you would become mentally ill. And you might be days away from moving into a cardboard box on the sidewalk and making weird noises when people walk by. Joe Scarborough.
And I just can't even believe, I have to believe now, there are people out there, a lot of Republicans out there, that actually are more likely to vote for him because he stole nuclear secrets. What does that say about the Republican Party?
Because he stole nuclear secrets. This is the hypothesis that's being peddled by MSDNC and Morning Joke. And then they had the space alien, Eugene Robinson, sitting next to him. And you might have heard him go somewhere in the middle of it. Honestly, he does remind me of Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black. Cracking his neck and raw beetles crawling out from his collar. But Eugene Robinson summed it up, I think, perfectly for the news media. What he's talking about here is the news media's role in our society. He didn't know it because he's a fundamentally dishonest person. But what Eugene Robinson on Morning Joke on MSDNC was saying this morning, he's speaking for the entirety of the American news media virtually, and stating what their goal is and what their intentions are.
Look, I think we, the voters, have to destroy the Republican Party in order to save it. That's the only thing that's what has to happen, because the Republican Party right now, your former party, is actually nothing like your former party.
We had to destroy the party in order to save it. Here are the Democrats gathering outside for some light looting and arson and attacking the police. They had to destroy the country in order to save it. It's the old Vietnam War axiom quoted by an Associated Press reporter, Peter Arnett, allegedly quoting a U.S. military officer, saying something generally like, but not exactly, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. Not the actual quote, but it's that doesn't matter. Here are the Democrats. They had to destroy the country in order to save it. Now they have to destroy the Republican Party in order to save it. Off the East Coast of the United States, they had to destroy the world in order to save it. Destroy the planet in order to save it. They're the left. They're not liberals. This is the left. You heard those explosives back there, M80s. Those are 1/8 of a stick of dynamite, hurling them at the police. No arrests. No 18-year sentences. No long trials in Washington, D.C. It's good to be a Democrat. Loot, loot, lemon. Louis Vuitton. Destroying the world in order to save it. I'm telling you. Did you hear George Snuffleupagus over the weekend? He was shocked, I say. By the poll, it's the same poll that Joe Scarborough was talking about, and all of the media are shocked, and they, he said, the voters, he meant the news media, need to destroy the Republican Party, not in order to save it, just in order to destroy it, because they're not liberals, they're the left. And the left destroys everything, from whales and dolphins to our system of electing people to the presidency and beyond. What don't they wreck? Crime wave America, thanks, Democrats. We are at 888-630-9625. Now at NBC News and the Washington Post, you need to destroy the Washington Post in order to, you need to destroy the Republican Party in order to save it. In order to save it. It's not really in order to save it, because you don't destroy something in order to save it. It's an old sarcastic thing. And they had the $17 million man, George Stephanopoulos, on the Sunday morning show. He was a Clinton administration official, and then he instantly overnight transformed into a world-class journalist without ever working a day as a journalist. But really, he's just a Democrat Party apparatchik. And he's talking about the poll where President Trump and Joe Biden are tied with 46% each. 46% each. And George Stephanopoulos was standing next to himself. He was beside himself over this.
It is kind of shocking in a way.
Shocking.
That despite all of the baggage that Donald Trump carries, he's tied with Joe Biden right now.
Kind of shocking. Just absolutely shocking. 46%. And then Trump with 46%. And the news media is shocked because, the plan here was to destroy Trump with the indictments. And it doesn't seem to be working. And that means the media is going to have to turn up the heat. It's kind of shocking. That's what he said. He's very, very shocked, and they're all shocked by this. Of course, the big poll that has them all going crazy from the Wall Street Journal, 46 to 46. Then they went to New York Times because it's a circle fest in a hot tub. The New York Times got Eugene Robinson of the Washington Post. You got Peter Baker here from the New York Times. George Stephanopoulos, ABC Fake News. The Clinton White House, just another Democrat with an anchorman's job. Peter Baker.
And it's an alarm bell for Democrats who think that because of these indictments, he's going to automatically lose a general election. This poll suggests no. It's a very competitive race, 46 to 46%. As you say, we can't be certain about polls, certainly as far out, but it suggests that this is not in any way a gimme for the Democrats, despite former President Trump's legal trouble.
You hear, and this is very disappointing, it's the New York Times. Do you hear him say, and we think? That the keywords, just play the very beginning of that until we get to we think, because he's talking about these polls, and he's talking about from the Democrat Party's perspective, and he says, and we think. And
it's an alarm bell for Democrats who think that because of these indictments, he's going to automatically lose a general election.
There we go. And because we think. And that's the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC News, and NBC Fake News, MSDNC. They're all on Team Democrat. Larry Hogan kind of used to be a Republican governor of the state of Maryland, and never Trumper, and not much of a Republican. Had a moment here and there, but not for long. Larry Hogan over the weekend.
People were somewhat hopeful that we would be in a different place by now, and now they're starting to come to the realization that, hey, we might actually have Donald Trump as the nominee and Joe Biden as the nominee. And this is something that 70% of the people in America do not want.
Yeah, who could have seen that coming? So the forces of the universe have once again aligned against Donald Trump in his effort to win the presidency back. Our news media